Welcome back. This is week 4, part 3. I'm going to wrap up our lectures this week by reiterating what you should be doing for that first session with your student, as well as take a look at some samples, analyze some samples, and then interpret the results to plan some next steps for the student I was working with. So again, prior to your first session, make sure you have all of the documentation submitted so that you do have all of the appropriate permission to work with your student. There are 5 parts: your planning and prepping, the opening activity, the structured assessment, which is the MRP, motivation to read profile, an informal assessment, which can be an interest inventory or anything you would really like to give for that matter, then having a parent interview ready, and then closing with some sort of activity or launch. You'll notice from my session plan, my assessment plan, that I put the MRP before the interest inventory, and after thinking about it more, I kind of wish I would have reordered those to do the interest inventory first, because I think that will not only help you get to know the student a little bit better and what they like, but also it will lower their affective filter, so it might be easier to follow that with the MRP. So just some things to think about as you are making those session plans. What is a good order of the assessments? You can always feel free to give a break, or if you would like to divide your session over several days and you have the flexibility to do that, you may want to do that too. So it's really up to you how you plan your session, but definitely put that forethought in. All right. So there is some sort of opening activity or warm up, like a read aloud, some technology, a game, whatever you want to do there to hook the student, get them interested, and lower the affective filter. Again, you want to do some sort of interest survey, informal assessment, because we really want to be learning about the interests of our students so that you can incorporate those in future sessions. I have a bunch on titanium. You can always make your own. This is the sample that I use, the All About Me robot. And I asked the student if she wanted to write her answers herself or if she wanted me to write them for her and do more of like an interview. And so she had said that she wanted to write them herself. So it was kind of right there I got an idea of her level of confidence when it comes to writing. She was very positive about it, eager to do it, so I could tell just from that simple exchange already get some good anecdotal record data from her. So she did the All About Me robot herself. She wrote, I am special because I am smart. I'm already seeing some of the R controlled missing the vowel there. However, she did get it in art, so that's interesting. I may want to intervene with some phonics by analogy. If you know art, you should know smart and chart and cart and those different things. Green, she spelled right. Cheetah, got it. Princesses, had a little difficulty with. Play with my dad, that word play, she had inverted the 2 letters there. When she grows up, she wants to be an art teacher. So you can see the interest in art. She helps others by picking up her toys. And then her favorite food is mac and cheese. So just by this indicator, I could already get an idea of her self perception for reading and writing tasks, and then I could already see some of her spelling difficulties and where she's at in phonics. And I know I'm planning future sessions, anything I can incorporate that has to do with art she would probably like, or princesses, maybe an informational text on cheetahs. All of those would bring in her interest. So that is a sample All About Me activity. You're free to do, whatever you would like as far as that goes. Um, Here's another one that I did. This is an interest attitude interview specifically designed for primary students, and you're supposed to interview them. So I asked her a series of questions here. Not as fun and engaging because the one prior she was able to use the markers herself and enjoyed doing that. This was more of an interview. but from it I learned a little bit about her family. I learned that she does have responsibilities at home, that she does read at home with her mom and dad at night. She has a specific bedtime after dinner when the news is done. No TV in her room. Some days she watches a lot, other days she doesn't. She likes to talk and walk at recess with some specific friends. No pets. But she does take dance and piano lessons, so you can kind of get a glimpse at her home environment. It appears there are some structures in place for bedtime and reading at night and that sort of thing. This is It Continued, asking about school life. She likes music and art. She reads at school. She does consider herself a good reader. When I asked her what makes a person a good reader, she said it makes you smart and makes you good at reading. And then I probed her a little further and says, what makes a person a good reader? And she said, by telling the words and looking at the pictures. So you can kind of see right there what the teacher might be reinforcing there in the classroom, telling the words and looking at the pictures. So she has some awareness of decoding and word attack strategies. Princesses again came up. She gets to write a lot and really enjoys writing. So that was that survey that I also gave. Next piece would be a parent interview. This is helpful for gathering information about the family background, parents' expectations, a health history, support at home. If you're using Lipson and Wixon 4th edition, page 92 and 93 have some different forms, but make sure that the parent you are interviewing is comfortable filling out the form. They may prefer to do it in an interview setting. You can also create your own, or I put a sample up on Titanium that was created from someone in 516 last semester. I saw it in her artifacts and thought, wow, that's a great parent interview form. And so I asked her if I could have permission to share it with others so you can benefit from her work. She pulled a bunch of questions from resources she had found to create what I think is a really nice parent interview form, so feel free to use that. And then lastly, we have the MRP. I did talk about it last week, so this shouldn't be new information to you. There is two versions of it. There's one in the article this week, and then I have another one up in the Titanium folder. You can also give another motivation survey from the list of resources as well. It does have two parts, the reading survey, which is the multiple choice questions, and then the conversational interview is the second part. So make sure when planning your session you allot enough time for it to be administered. It is intended for grades 1 through 6, so if you do have a kindergarten student, you may need to do something to make it a little more interactive or engaging. So here is what the MRP looks like. As you can see, there's two sample questions to get them started. And then remember, again, you are reading this out loud, so there is no error or threats to validity because of the fact that the student can't read. So my friends think I am a very good reader. Reading a book is something I like to do sometimes. I read a lot better than my friends, so right away you can see that this student does have strong confidence. When you score it, you're pretty much just going to go through, and the most positive answer gets a 4, and then the least positive answer would get a 1, and then the questions alternate between self-concept as a reader and value of reading. So all of the odds have to do with self-concept, and then the evens have to do with the value of reading. So right away I can see this student 38 out of 40 for self-concept, so that's definitely a strength there. And then value of reading is a little less, but still high. So her overall score is the 91%. And in the notes I put that she admits to having difficulty answering questions in class, but overall has a high self-concept. She also values reading, although she doesn't prioritize it as much. So that could be a need. It could also have to do with the age. So those were things I was able to find out from the MRP. Here is the conversational interview where you're asking the student about what types of interesting stories they've read recently and why was it interesting. Had a little bit of difficulty drawing this out from her. The general reading questions went a little bit better. Remember, you can always feel free to rephrase these and ask more probing questions. So, she wasn't able to tell me her favorite author and just didn't give very specific information there. So conclusions I was able to draw from my first session with the student was there are a number of strengths. She does have a strong self-perception, is confident as a reader. There's evidence of positive reading behaviors happening in the home. That is based on self-report though, so I wasn't there directly observing it. The student values that reading is important. So these are the interpretations I would want to note on my weekly assessment reflection. Some needs and some next steps. It seems like she maybe would benefit from some intentional literature and author studies that connect to her interests so she can learn about authors whose styles she might like. She may need some help identifying reading role models in her life and then further investigate her response that she likes to read some of the time. So there were just some, inconsistent responses throughout, maybe getting some more clarification. And that's also a limitation of the MRP is those multiple choice questions. You have a hard time identifying the how or why behind what they're saying. So it's hard to know. I kind of wish I would have asked more follow-up questions like why do you say that to see if she did understand the question because it can be confusing with the different answer choices. All right, that brings us to the end of our lectures for this week. Hopefully, you can now explain the different components of the affective domain. There is motivation, there is attitude, there is interest, and self-concept. You should be ready to make your weekly assessment plan for session 1 as well and know what is expected for that. You should hopefully feel ready to administer some diagnostics for the affective domain so that you can analyze your assessment results and plan any recommendations for your student. Some resources to share with you. I did put these on Titanium, but this resource is by Jerry Johns. It's called Improving Reading, and it is amazing. If you're interested in being a reading specialist, this is a great tool to have. There is a chapter for essentially any concern a student might have in the area of reading. And then within that chapter, it has assessment ideas as well as intervention ideas to help target those specific things. So it is a great resource that I used a lot that gives you intervention strategies and resources. So let me just show you a couple of things that are in. So again, these come from the Improving Reading Jerry Johns book. It comes with a disc, which is awesome, and you can print all of these out from there. But I put these on Titanium. In there, they had the motivation to read profile that's a little less dated looking. They also have a book rating activity to help with student interest. Here is that elementary reading attitude survey I was telling you about with Garfield. That's in there. This is a secondary reading attitude assessment. Here's an interest inventory, continued, inventory of experiences. So here's a self-perception scale. So any of these things that I put on Titanium, you can definitely feel free to utilize for this session or any sessions. All right, to launch you this week, I have this excerpt from actually the very front of the Jerry Johns book, which I think is appropriate for this course, but it is the Children's 10 Rights to Excellent Reading Instruction. Hopefully, it will motivate and inspire you to have a great first session with your students. So have a great week.